All right, welcome everyone. Let's see. If you can hear me, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. There you go. Okay, good deal. Thank you so much. All right, so my camera is not working. I don't know why, uh, but it says I cannot show the camera. So hopefully you can see the grader training chalkboard. Okay, very good. Okay. And I don't know if anyone else is sharing their camera, but I can't see your profiles either. So we're just going to go on and go ahead with the meeting. I want to start by thanking everyone for showing up today. Um, we all know how important it is to have a successful meet. And this is a little something that we can give 30 to 45 minutes of time to help ensure that our meet is successful. If you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. We'll take that. If you want to put a question in the chat, that's a wonderful place to do that as well. And I'll be able to answer those questions as we go through this. Let me see what that green line is there. I think I may have written something already here. All right. Okay, good. Good deal. All right. So let's go on with our grader training. So you may be a contest director, assistant director, or a grader for one of our state meets. Remember that contest directors and assistant directors grade as well as those who have been designated as graders. So let's look at some of our grading standards for PSIA. Number one, don't mark over the contestant answers. Make all your marks to the side, right? So we don't want to obscure what the contestant actually wrote, because remember, you're not the only grader. All tests will be graded at least twice, and the top 10 scores will be graded a third time. Try to use a separate color from other graders as best you can. Since you'll have probably 5 people grading, it may not be possible to ensure that everybody has a different color. That's okay. Usually what we do is we make one mark for the first grader, and then the mark right next to it on the right is the second grader, and then the third grader, and that's how you can sort of differentiate the different marks. Be sure to calculate your own score each time you grade a test. So in other words, don't go through and recognize that you have marked the exact same correct and incorrect markings as the person before you, because that person may have made a mistake in calculating the score. So do go ahead and recalculate your score independent of what any other grader has done. Write your score on the appropriate line and provide your initials. So that way, if there is some question about what the score should be or anything, we can find who actually graded it for grader 1 or grader 2 or grader 3. If your score differs from the other scores that have already been calculated, that needs to be resolved immediately. You don't go on and continue on thinking that someone else is going to be responsible for saying, well, obviously this person made a mistake, and so we're just going to go with this. Or there were 3 graders, and 2 of the graders reached this score, and the third grader reached a different score, so we're just going to use the score from the first 2 graders. If there is a difference in the scores, that needs to be resolved, and we need to find out why one person thought the score should be one number and other people thought it should be a second number. The best way to do that, of course, is to first double check your math to make sure that you calculated the score correctly, and if not, change it. And if you are still confident that your scoring is correct, then talk to the other person and you say, hey, if you don't know the people, you know their initials because they've written them by the answer, by their score. You say, who is DR? And DR would be like, hey, I'm Doug Ray. I graded this one. What's the problem? And then y'all work it out and see where the conflict is. Of course, if you can find where that person marked an answer correct and you marked it incorrect while you're grading, that's also good to resolve that. We want to make sure that the grading is consistent throughout the test. So make sure that you look for things like that. Mark. Oh, here we go. So this is the next. This is the next page. So multiple choice contest. So um, this is the information for the specific contest at this time, and we'll go through all these briefly. Now, a lot of these contests are similarly graded, so you'll be able to catch a lot of information from watching all of these. So for the multiple choice contest, like art memory part one, dictionary skills, listening skills, maps, graphs, and charts, math, music memory part one, science and vocabulary, this is the multiple choice contest that we have. Contestants are required to use capital letters. Any attempt to write in the answer blank constitutes an attempt. And once they attempt the problem, that problem must be graded as either correct or incorrect. It cannot be resolved as that they were trying to skip it. So once they write something, then you have to grade that. If the letter can still be made out, even if it was erased, you still have to grade it as right or wrong. And if the letter cannot be made out, but there's a bunch of erasing or overmarking or whatever, and you can't read what it's supposed to be, then you just count it wrong as an attempt. The answers must be written in the correct blanks, right? They can't go off and put it someplace else. And also, if they get offline, you can't go back and fix that. So that scenario came up a couple of years ago where I think it was the spelling contest where a student skipped a line and they started writing the answers one line away. And unfortunately, those were all counted wrong because they were on the wrong problem number. Mark a check mark or an X to the right of the answer blank and any other grading mark. So if someone has already graded it, then you just put your next marking check or X to the right. So let's take a look at some examples on how for example, an art memory part one test would be graded. So here you can see I've sort of created two sheets. The contestant answer sheet is on top. The answer key is on the bottom. And let's say that this student only did the first five. Think for a second, knowing these rules, how would you grade some of these? Which ones would be counted correct and which ones would be counted incorrect? Let me give you a few seconds to think about that, and then I'll show you the answers. So number one, that would be counted correct. And we put a little check mark. Number two, unfortunately, that would be counted incorrect because the B was a lowercase b instead of a capital B. And so lowercase letters get counted incorrect. Number three, they wrote C, then they thought better of it and erased it, but I can still see it. And so it gets counted correct. So this is the rule that says even if they write something in the blank, it's going to have to be counted as correct or incorrect. So if you end up coaching your students, tell them once you write an answer, just go ahead and leave it. So that way it makes it easier for the graders. But here in this case, they erased it and we can still clearly see it. So we count it. It's a C. The answer was C, so it is correct. D is incorrect and E is correct. Now for the scoring. And so let's suppose that that's all this student did, just these five problems. So for the scoring, We don't have to check anything else since there's no other marks on the page. For the scoring in this particular contest, and the scoring is different in different contests. So make sure that you look and see what the scoring is. The scoring is written there at the top. Scoring is +5 for each correct answer, no deduction for incorrect or skipped or unanswered questions. Section right in here. So this one's easy. This one's just +5 for all the correct answers. So there were 3 correct answers. So at the top under the score 1, score 2, or score 3, whichever one you are, you would write, you do the math, 5 times 3 is 15, and then you'd put your initials. My initials are DR, so I'd put a DR. Be sure to double check the scoring rules for contest. Some of them are +5 only. Others are +5 -2. It just depends on the contest. Does anyone have any questions over this type of multiple choice contest? All right. Let's go on to spelling. So spelling is one of the more challenging grading scenarios. But basically you have a list of the words and you take the contestant answer sheet like this. And so let's just go through some of the grading here. Number 1, the word was keynote. And it looks like keynote might be correct from the student, but in fact, this one would be counted wrong. The student has put a space in between the words key and note, and keynote is one word. So this would be counted incorrect. Sonnet. Oh, yes, that's wrong for letter spacing. Sonnet is correct. Utopia. So notice the notation that we use when the word can be written with the first letter in lowercase or in uppercase. The uppercase version is put in parentheses on the right side of the word. So utopia with a lowercase first letter or uppercase first letter, that is correct. Blizzard is correct. Optional capital letter. Blizzard is correct. Welfare was written in cursive. That's fine. It makes it difficult for the graders. So if you're coaching this event in the future, I would coach them to write in manuscript. Gigabyte, although we often use gigabyte as a word with a capital G, mainly because the abbreviation for gigabyte is a capital G and a capital B, writing the word out with a capital G is incorrect. We have a skipped problem. Skipped problems in spelling do not count for or against the student. And then fool's goal. What do you think about that one? That one is incorrect. It's missing the apostrophe. So some of the words have apostrophes, some of them have spaces, some of them have hyphens. So make sure that you're getting that exactly right on the spelling test. The spelling test is really sort of in 2 parts. The first 75% of the words are from the inside spelling list that is published at the beginning of the year. Those words count for 5 points. And then the last 25% of the test is outside words that the students haven't heard before. Those are worth 7 points. And it is clearly marked where the outside words start and where the +7 starts. So what you would do is you would write, let me get the annotator going here. You would write how many they got right here. So let's say 10. And then how many outside words they got right. Let's say 5. So that's 50, and 35 is an 85. And that's what you would score for that one. I just made up those numbers. So those are not reality numbers here. But that's what it would look like, something like that. So these blanks right here are for how many they got right from the inside words, the first 75%, and the second part is how many outside words they got correct. Please feel free to use your cell phone calculators to come up with these numbers. There's no problem with doing that. And then the last part of this is the legibility test. And the legibility test covers all of our contests, but it's used a lot when it comes to the spelling test. And the idea is that you cover all the letters to the left and to the right of a particular letter in question. Then you ask another person who has not yet graded this contest what letter they believe is shown. And whatever letter they say it is, you sort of go with it. So in other words, what you're doing is you're covering up letters around it. So that way the independent person is not influenced by what the rest of the word is. And they would say, oh yeah, well, that's obviously an M because that's how you would spell the word that has this M in it or whatever. If the person can't make out what that letter is, if they say, well, I just don't know what that letter would be, then it's illegible, and it's wrong. Okay, so that's the legibility test. Cover it up except for just the letter itself, and then ask somebody else who hasn't seen it what they think it is. All right, questions over spelling. All right. Let's take a look at art memory part 2. And and this type rules apply to music memory as well. So suppose we have the student answer sheet at the top, the student contestant response sheet at the top, and the correct answers at the bottom. One thing to notice about art memory and in music memory as well is that there's a big dividing line right here. And so the items to the left count as one set of answers, and the items to the right count as another set of answers. This was an issue last year uh, when the graders thought that the whole line was just worth one answer, and they had to go back and regrade the entire test after verification. So hopefully we've made that more clear this time with this very thick bar right here that the artist is one answer and the painting title is another answer. As graders, you will put your scoring here in these boxes for grader 1, grader 2, grader 3, grader 1, grader 2, grader 3. The only available points for each of these questions is a 5, a 3, or a 0. It's a 5 if it is all correct with punctuation, spelling, capitalization, all the articles, everything is perfectly fine as written on the answer sheet. If there's an error in punctuation or spelling or capitalization, or it's missing one of the articles, then, but you can still tell what it's supposed to be, then it's a +3. And then if it's just completely wrong, then it's a 0. Question for from the chat. For art memory, do students need to know the artist's first names too? No. In fact, we would prefer it if they don't use the first names, because then we would have to research that to see if they are actually the correct first names. So let's just go with the last names and actually go with the name that is listed on the official list from PSIA. That is the way to go. Go with the official list. All right, so let's take a look and see now how these would have been graded. So the first one, number 1, the artist is Warhol. That is correct. So that's a 5. Now, you can do this either way. You can either go straight down and do all the artists first and then go back and do the paintings, or you can go across. It's however you want to do it. Remember that the artist and the painting title are independent of each other. So you can do it either way. The way this PowerPoint was created, I went across. So Caroline, correct. That's a 5. Number 2, Der Chirico. That's a 3 because the day in the official list was capitalized, and the way the student wrote it, it was not capitalized. So that would be a +3 for capitalization error. The painting, conversation among ruins, the student is missing the article the. So that would be a +3. Question 3, wood. Correct. Grant Wood. New road. Perfect. That's a 5 on both of those. Butanoni. The student has added an extra T, so that's a spelling error. So that's +3. Supper at Bethany's. The student capitalized the at, and so that's a mistake, and that's a +3. So you have to be very careful watching the capitalizations and the spellings. Number 5, Caravaggio. Now that's just the wrong answer, so that's a 0. And then Holy Family with Saint Anne. The official title of the painting has the word saint spelled out. So this would be a +3. All right. And you would continue like that, and then you would sum it up at the bottom and come up with your score that way. Judge 2 would use the center column and Judge 3. Now, we've changed the format of this test so that the contestant answer sheets are now on legal size paper. So you'll have more room to work with. And we think that that will go much better than last year, where it was a letter size and they just ran out of space to write things. Any other questions about art memory? All right. And like I said, music memory works much the same way, except that um, the major work and the selection is one item, and the composer counts as the other item. So you'll see the big thick bar here that separates the two components. So it's both of these together count as 5 points, and the composer counts as 5 points. Now, we did have a question come up, and what if they put the selection here and the major work over here? And unfortunately, that's wrong. So that would be a 0 for that. So you can't switch those around. They have to be in order. But the other rules for the articles and the capitalizations and everything else, those still apply. You sum it up down here, and these have a backside, so you would do the sum on the backside, and you get a total score and everything, and then you can write the score up here. This I would leave this for the contest director to put the score there. You could put your score here. Let's say it was a 60, and then put your initials down below. That would be fine. All right. Put the button here. All right, let's take a look at number sense. So in number sense, remember that they have to use a blue pen for this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the list of rules, and then we'll go over the grading of this particular test. So if you are the first grader, look through the test to see what is the last problem that the student wrote anything in the answer blank for. Now remember, they're not allowed to do scratch work. So if there's some mark somewhere close to an answer, that has to count as well. But you would draw a line under the last problem attempted, like so. Do not mark answers correct on this test. Just mark the incorrect answers and the skipped answers. That'll make it easier for you to determine how many are correct or incorrect. We have a question in the chat. Will calculators be provided to the graders. No, we don't have calculators to provide to the graders, but you can use your cell phones. Okay. Draw a line through any of the blank or skipped questions, through the blank of the skipped questions. So for example, on this particular test, number 7 was skipped. So we'll end up drawing a line through that one here in a second. Do not mark through any of the contestant answers or try to correct them. We want each grader to see the original response from the contestants. So don't mark through any of the contestant work. Can the students use commas? And the answer is yes, as long as they are placed in the correct position. So if there's a comma in the incorrect position, then it counts against the student. Every 10th problem must be written as a whole number. So they can't use fractions, they can't use decimals, and it must be in the range given. So here's an example of this right here. So for number 10, any answer that's a whole number that's between 16,891 and 18,667 would be counted as correct. This number here in the brackets is the exact answer. That's just for verification purposes if the student wants to contest what the actual answer was that came up with this range. If the student puts down an answer that is the end of a range element, then that is counted as correct as well. So these numbers and any number in between them, that's a whole number. Fractions must be reduced to lowest terms. No extraneous zeros in the front or back of calculators. This contestant must use a blue pen. Therefore, the graders should use colors other than blue. So red, purple, green, all of those would be very good. And we will have grading pens for the graders in the grading room. On number sense, you're not allowed to erase or mark over. That would result in an incorrect response. Excessive erasures and markovers will result in a disqualification, but an incidental erasure and markover, that's only counted as an incorrect response. So there's a little bit of a judgment call that I will be happy to help you make in the tab room about whether or not the student accidentally made a markover or a stray mark, and whether or not it's excessive. Like they are trying to sort of go against the spirit of the contest. If they're doing that, then we will disqualify them. If it's an accident, if it's incidental, then that's just an incorrect mark for that particular response. So, so not every erasure or markover is going to result in a disqualification. In fact, we'd like to keep disqualifications to a minimum if possible. The numbers do not need to be written together, right? So that's one of the quirks of number sense. They can be spread apart. They do this because of the way that the tricks work and how the numbers are calculated using mental math and such. So that is allowed. It still has to be in the answer spot, answer blanks, but they don't have to necessarily be together. And then the legibility test for numbers, same as it was for spelling, applies for number formation as well. So let's take a look at this student's results. So I would start with number 168 looks good, but I don't mark anything. I just leave it alone. Hopefully students are going to have more right than they are wrong. And it just makes it harder to determine how many are right and how many are wrong if you're marking both of those. Number 2, 120, fine. Number 3 was 23 and not 24, so we'll just mark that as wrong. Number 4, 6,446. The student wrote a comma. The comma is in the correct spot, so that would be counted as correct. 5 is correct. 6 is correct. There might be some question about whether or not that last digit is a 6, but it looks pretty consistent with the other 6s. And if you want to do the legibility test, you could do that. It doesn't look like any other character. so that's fine. Number 7 was skipped, so I would put a line through that and mark it incorrect. Number 8, the numbers are correct, but the comma is in the wrong spot. So that's wrong. The comma would have to be after that second 0, not after the first 0. 9 is fine. Number 10, the number is within the range, but it's a decimal number, and that's not allowed. And I'll tell you the quick anecdote story. The reason they had to change this rule some 40 years ago is because students were using this part that is to the right of the decimal, which, doesn't change the value of the answer very much. They were using this portion as scratch work. Let's say I needed to remember 45 and 75 for some reason. They would just tack that on after the decimal, and it didn't change the value. And so that, of course, was against the spirit of what we're doing here. And so they made it where all the 10th estimation problems marked with a star here have to be integers, have to be whole numbers. So, so that's why that rule has come into place. So number 10 is wrong. Number 11, it's 23. The 2 and the 3 are kind of split apart, but that's okay. And that would be counted correct. Number 12, the answer on the answer key is 1/6, and 2/12 is equivalent to 1/6, but it's not reduced. So that would be wrong. And then 13 is right. 14, again, it's the right numerical answer, but there's an extra 0 at the end, and extraneous zeros, either on the left or on the right, count against the student. And so that's how we would mark this one. Any question on those rules for number sense? And then I will go over the grading process for number sense and calculator next. On number 12, can a student write 2/12 and then 1/6? No. No, they only get one stab at the apple. They only get one shot at writing the answer. So they can't write both. Writing 2/12 and then 1/6 would be the equivalent of sort of working it out without doing it in your head. Yeah. So that's a good question. That would be considered incorrect. So the question from the chat was, can the student, where's my annotation? There it is. Can the student write 2/12 and then maybe equals 1/6? And that answer is, that's a no. You can't do that. Because that's like scratch work. All right. All right, let's take a look at the scoring. So there are 2 methods for scoring for number sensing calculator. Method 1, you count up the number of correct answers, multiply that by 5, count up the number of incorrect answers, multiply that by 2, and then subtract. That's one way to do it. Method number 2, we call this the shortcut method. You multiply the last problem number attempted by 5. So it's not that you're counting the ones that are right, you're counting the ones that are right and wrong. So in this case, it'll be 14. Count the number of incorrect and multiply that by 7. So essentially, in the first step, you're counting all of them as right. And then the ones that weren't right, you're going back and taking away that 5 and the 2 for the penalty for getting it wrong. And then you subtract those. So here it would be, if you count up how many correct there are 8 correct, multiply that by 5 to get 40. There are 6 incorrect, multiply that by 2 to get 12, and subtract to get 28 points. Or if you use method number 2, the shortcut method, you just look at the last problem number attempted. That was problem number 14. 14 times 5 is 70. There were 6 incorrect responses. Multiply that by 7, and you get 42 points, and you subtract those. 70 minus 42 is also 28. So it works out both ways. You can use either one. Ultimately, no one's going to see your calculations because you can do them in the calculator or you can do them on the margins of the test if you want to. And you would write your answer at the top or in the box on the cover sheet, rather, and initial that. All right, let's take a look at calculator applications. And this is our last one. So we've got three different types of problems on calculator applications. The first type of problem are these where students just punch them into the calculator. Those are called punch problems. Additionally, there are geometry problems that have pictures drawn and they solve aspects for that picture. And then you have word problems. Now, there are a couple of different quirks to the word problem. So this rule that I'm giving you now applies to all the punch problems, all the geometry problems, and most of the word problems. And that is the answers have to have three significant digits, but it can be off in that third digit by one, either plus or minus. So three significant digits is what you're seeing written over here on this is the answer key. So you can see how we have 1, 2, 3 significant digits. Significant digits start at the first non-zero number. So this is a 0, that's not significant, but this one is 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So those are three significant digits. And so the answers that we would accept for this number 21, the correct answer on the answer sheet is negative 895. So negative 895 is a correct answer. They can also write it in scientific notation, negative 8.95 times 10 squared. But you can also be off by 1 in the last significant digit spot. So that's why this number here can be a 4 or a 6. A 4 or a 6. Now, the tricky part to grading calculator is that those 2 or 4 extra answers are not written. And so you just have to be careful when you see that. If the first 2 are right, double check to make sure the last one is also right or the last one is off by 1 digit to make sure that it is correct. Nowadays, usually the students set their calculators to a correct mode so that there's no extra rounding involved at the end, and they usually just get the right answer. So that works out good. But that is the rule. It can be off by 1 digit at the end. And it can't be off by just any digit, right? So negative 899, that would not count. But negative 894, negative 896, that would count. Just do that. All right, the next type of problem is money word problems. So the regular word problems that end with minutes or feet or miles or hours or whatever, the same rules apply about the three significant digits. But there are two types of word problems where the rules are a little bit different. One of them is money word problems, denoted by a dollar sign and the answer blank right here. In that case, the student is not allowed to use scientific notation. They have to go all the way down to the penny, and it can be off. And this is a mistype right here on my part. I just copied this wrong. They can be off in the penny by plus or minus 1. Okay, it's not necessarily the third digit. That's a copy mistake. Don't even look at that. We're gonna edit this part out of the video too. So we'll just go ahead and mark all that out. All right. So let's see what that means. Let's see here. So there it is. So here's the answer, $2,386.90. So that means The three acceptable answers would be $2,386.89 or 90 cents. So they can be off by one digit in the penny, plus or minus one in the penny. All right. Okay. And then the last type of word problem is an integer problem, like number 26. For integer word problems, it's denoted by integer in the blank, and it says integer in the answer key, number 26 here on the right. Scientific notation is not allowed, and it has to be exact. It cannot be off by anything. So the only correct answer for this one would be 46. And that's the answer. Other rules that apply to calculator applications. When they use scientific notation, they have to use times 10 with the X. They can't use parentheses and they can't use a dot. If it has more or less than the three significant digits for those problems that require three significant digits, then it's just wrong. So for example, on number 23, the answer is 0.915. If in their calculator it comes up with 0.9148, it's still wrong. And if they rounded to two significant digits, it's still wrong. So it has to be these three significant digits plus or minus one in the last digit. The contestants can do scratch work on the test, but they need to do it on the left side away from the answer blanks. All the answers are on the right side of the test. Only the answers can be written in the answer blanks on the right side. The contestants on calculator can erase, they can mark over, but it does constitute an attempt. So they can't erase their way out of having that question graded. So if there's an erasure in the spot, and that was the last one they attempted, it does count as an attempt and it has to be graded. You grade up through the last problem attempted, just like in number sense. Draw a line under the last problem attempted, but double check because sometimes they will skip around. In fact, skipping around on the calculator test is one of the strategies for getting a higher score. So make sure you go through the entire test to see exactly what was the last problem attempted. But the scoring is a +5 -2, just on like number sense, and you can use the little trick as well. And there it is. Thank you for your attention. Without your service, these contests could not happen. I cannot grade all 1,300 and something tests that we're going to have this weekend. It's not really that many tests because we have a lot of speech contestants, but there are 1,300 and something entries this weekend with double entries and triple entries from some contestants. The total contestant body count is 1,027, I believe. So there's 1,000 students coming to Texas State this weekend, and we're very excited to have them. Thank you for your service on Saturday. Be sure to enjoy some snacks and a light lunch in the hospitality room, Derek 229. Make sure you're wearing your personnel badge so that you'll have access to that. Your personnel badge is different from the generic badges that we sent out for guest. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I worked hard on this presentation, getting all the little where it flies in and does this and the content, trying to figure out, okay, what is the best examples of things that can go wrong when you're grading? It's easy to grade if they're all right, right? But what happens when things go wrong? That's what I tried to focus on, and I hope that came through as well. This video is being recorded. I'll put it online if you want to reference it again at some point during the week. And again, we appreciate you so much. Let us know if we can do anything for you. I'll be on campus this weekend working in the tab room. Graders, remember that on your schedules, it says just report to the room that you're grading in when it's time for you to grade. We basically have two grading rooms so that you will be grading with other contests as well. that was done so that if there's some issue, you'll have other people there that can help you, and you can and learn from other people. But we do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll stick around for a few minutes if we have uh, other questions. Will there be training for subjective writing test? We don't have training for subjective writing test. I can send you what the rubrics look like so that you can know what to focus on ahead of time. Um, but and plus, I am not the expert on grading essays either. Um, but I can, if you would like, send me an email, Doug@academicmeet.com. I'll write that down for you here. And I'll be happy to send you a copy of the rubric that's used so that you can focus on that. Okay, good. Um, yeah, I wouldn't know what to tell people actually. So, but anyway, thank you all for coming. I hope you were able to see the eclipse today. It was a little cloudy here at the house, but just in time, the cloud sort of burnt off, and we had a fantastic totality. It was amazing. What an eclipse! Oh, but yeah, thank you all for coming. And for those of you who are going to participate in the contest directors meeting, anyone is welcome to come if you're aspiring to be a contest director at some point and you want to learn more about that procedure. I will get offline now and prepare that slideshow for you, and then we'll see you back here at 7 o'clock. So thank you. I'm glad it worked. I think it was a really good thing. I wish we could do more of this kind of stuff in person where we can chat about things and stuff. But we do what we can, and we make it all great for the kids. So all right, thank you all for coming. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday. And drive safe to San Marcos. We look forward to seeing you all there. All right, have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.